Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Board of Directors of Montessori Peaks Academy. It is Tuesday, April 20, 2021, and we're starting at 6:32 p.m. And Ms. Myers, will you do the roll call, please?
I will. Tonight we have Jack Llewellyn, Brittany Horseman, Lisa Myers, Robin Morrissey, Beth McDonald, Christina Grant, Brandon Smith, and Becky Springstead, and a quorum is present.
Great. And of course we have the newly elected and/or appointed board members who will be seated next month with us, and we'll do the introductions and stuff later, but welcome. Thank you for being here. As kind of is our tradition in this setting, we take note of the mission statement, but we don't necessarily read it. So having done that, do we have community comments? And I know I have one that I want to talk about, but does anybody else have a community comment? Okay. I received an email right after the community meeting that I'll read in part, and I think it's really important because it directly relates to what John is going to talk about, I think, and some of our planning. Here's the short version. This person said, I have a concern that's been on my Jack talks, take two. I have a concern that's been on my mind for years, even before we became an MPA family. Whenever west sides of the fencing allows for students to be so clearly seen by drivers and pedestrians from, it kind of got cut off, but the idea is, where that primary playground is, you can see it, you can see the kids playing, it's kind of open, it's kind of exposed. So there's a two-part question of, is there more that we can do for security in that particular playground? And then for the outdoor learning spaces that we're creating as part of the renovations for the main campus, how are we accounting for the safety concerns, and those sorts of things. I talked to this person in particular, said that, these were issues that we're all concerned about, we think about a lot. But again, I think as we're talking about the renovations both at the main campus and at the North Campus, the more we can address and keep in mind the security concerns, which I know have factored in, but and address those and talk about those, I think that would be good for the community. So that's the community comment there. Okay, if there's nothing else, we are going to deviate from the agenda schedule just a little bit since John is joining us. And apparently he doesn't want to listen to everything else before we get to him. So, Brittany, do you have a lead in? Do you want to preface it with anything? Or do you just want to turn it over to John to talk?
Yeah, I haven't been involved in these conversations or whatever since then, so I don't have anything to add, so turn it over.
All right, John, the floor is yours.
Awesome. I'll take it away. Thanks, Jack. Members of the board, new members of the board I haven't met yet. Excuse me. I've got a really brief report followed by, I guess, an action item tonight. The report kind of centers around the K-8, which we've sort of affectionately begun to consider the South Campus on our sort of internal titling. And as you know, we've been working to develop a scope of work that includes improving playfield on the far east end of the building, creating a new secure front vestibule and a remodeled main office lobby. and then the outdoor learning spaces on the south side of the building. And I think many of you at various times have seen the development of that plan set as well as the completed plan set. And so we had a set of contractors that went ahead and bid that work for us. It has been pared down drastically, of course, from the kind of original concept for that building. I think Amy may have included in your board packet our sort of board action memorandum. And if that's the case, you probably don't need me to read it necessarily, but I would open it up if there are any questions, or if you'd like me to just give kind of a summary on that memo. I'm happy to do that as well.
And I think a summary would probably be helpful.
Sure, no problem. So we had invited 3 contractors to provide bids for the scope of work that HCM had designed. We went through a typical public procurement process, which included issuing drawings, holding a mandatory pre-bid meeting on site to kind of walk through the scope, make the bidders familiar with the specific site conditions, then gave them a couple weeks to go out to the market and develop a complete bid proposal. They submitted to us a fairly detailed set of documents, including their financial information, generally financial capacity of the firm, the team that they're proposing, a schedule of values, meaning all of the itemized breakdown of cost, list of their subcontractors, so we knew who they had gotten numbers from, and a few other details. 2 of the 3 bidders submitted numbers. Franz and Pittman, who we had been working with previously on the larger project, submitted what we call a no bid letter, which qualifies as a bid and keeps them in good standing, but doesn't necessarily help us with having 3 specific numbers to compare. But of the 2 bidders that stuck with us, they had base bid numbers of $323,659 and $357,832. And Symmetry Builders was the low at $323,659. We also had 2 alternates that were bid, which are scopes of work that we wanted to have specific itemized values for, and it would be up to the board to determine if they wanted to add those in now at the award of contract, or those prices are good for 30 days from bid, so we have a little bit of time if we wanted to look at including one or both of those alternates. The first alternate was 2 shade structures on the south side of the building incorporated with the outdoor learning areas. And then alternate number 2 was a concrete accessible walkway from the secured outdoor learning areas down to the kind of the wetlands area there on the south. And that one was $82,000. So in combination, I have to pull up the number because I don't have it readily at my fingertips. In combination, it is $452,000. The combination of base bid plus bid alternate. Number 1 is $370,109, and with just alternate number 2 was $405,000. Any questions I can address or respond to?
I would just add, just to refresher, especially for those that are new, back a couple months ago or 6 months ago, I can't remember when, we had allocated 3 buckets, 1 bucket for the north building, 1 bucket for the main campus, and another bucket to float between the 2. So if you could just keep in your mind what we had originally allocated and compare it to what these numbers are. I mean, these numbers are lower than what we put in the bucket, just Not saying we have to keep those buckets, but just as a reference point for where we are.
Brittany, that's a really good point, and we have done our best to kind of track funding levels on sort of on our side of the ledger, and this goes back to the beginning of time, and I think early or late 2018, early 2019, when we started to develop the concept for the project. And so in that, we've allocated, I think, fairly accurately cost to date between the K-8 and the North Campus. And, just from a kind of a seat of the pants, we've expensed or committed a little over $970,000 towards directly expenses related to the K-8. So that would include all of our design and engineering costs, and a portion of our project management costs, our geotechnical engineering surveys, all that kind of stuff. And of that, there was almost $174,000 of design fees for what was originally anticipated to be a much larger building addition that we scrapped collectively when the church building became available, and that became kind of a focus for some of the programs and expansion of the academics. So if you were to strictly adhere to that idea of 3 buckets, I think if you were to commit to the base bid tonight, we'd be at that about $970,000 dedicated solely to the K-8.
There we go. So John, is there anything, I'll use missing for lack of a better word, but is there anything not included in the symmetry bid that you think is critical or essential, or that we should know about?
Well, I think Jack, the way we constructed the bid, all of what we understand to be mission critical items have been included, and then those 2 bid alternates, the shade structures, definitely would be a benefit. I think that that accessible walk, concrete walk down to the pond area, probably isn't necessarily mission critical, but we understand that it holds a high priority. So I guess I would say from my understanding of the programmatic needs and wants in combination, that covers it. The base bid, I think, is all of the mission critical elements.
Did that include the fencing? I know the fencing on the outdoor education area. Was it still the chain link?
Yeah, that's right. It's a chain link fence with a crash bar gate mechanism on the inside, and then it'd be set up with either card reader or lock from the outside. So if a teacher or instructor accompanies students beyond that, then they would have access to come back in. But anybody, neighbor kids or people from the outside that didn't have the ability to affect the lock, in theory, wouldn't be able to get into that.
And but it's just a chain link. It didn't include any of those discussions about coverings so you can't see through the fence or anything like that. That would be extra, right?
That would be, and there's a number of different ways to accomplish that, from simple, like if you've driven by construction sites and you can see they've had the screen printed sort of fabric that you can put in. You can put slats that kind of all all these options get beat up and tore up at one point or another from, the wind or, kids kicking balls against them and things. But those are certainly all options. another option would be to go to a stockade style wood fence, which in some cases reduces visibility, but in many ways isn't quite as secure. So that's something that we could evaluate those things forever. It's just a matter of your preference collectively. And as the drawings were completed, that was the direction for the design team, was to go with the chain link.
And if I'm not mistaken, then if we put in the chain link, that gives us some optionality going forward on how we would like to make it more less visible going forward. So we didn't, we're not committed to it always looking just like a chain link fence.
I think that's entirely correct. You have a lot of options as the ones I just outlined, and there may be some other things you could do with plantings or screening that would be more perpendicular to Kipling, as opposed to trying to create that horizontal barrier. Those haven't been discussed or considered to date, but those certainly would be options that could be evaluated.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because people standing in the marsh looking in isn't necessarily our biggest concern, but it's more off of Kipling and things. So
right.
I think it was a concern of the staff. If they're going to be having education work out there, they need to have some way to make sure the kids are secure and not able to access. So I think that was one of the main focus of that.
No, I agree with that on security, but not necessarily on visibility. That was my only point.
Yeah.
This includes the irrigation for the field to the east, but does not include any upgrade, we haven't touched the playground, right? We're leaving that alone. Okay.
Yeah, we're leaving that alone at this time.
Okay.
And that was based off of the design committee's valuation of priorities. As COVID came and as they've used that, that field became a higher priority than the playground.
Okay. Brian and Amy, I feel like you've been in part of these discussions. Do you still feel these are our priorities? This is in line with what we need most? I only ask because I know one piece of equipment's now struggling.
Well, I mean, what you're getting for the money, okay, you're getting the front security redone. You're getting field to the east, so that field that's been weeds for 23 years. And then to the south, you're getting the outdoor classrooms. And then perimeter fencing with sod. We will tie off security-wise to the gym on the north, so that when you're out on the east playground or in the outdoor learning spaces to the south, that whole playground for the first time in the school's history will actually be secured all the way around. Security as far as fencing up top, that's to me a separate issue. That's a visibility thing that we can look at. But then I think there's a third component that we're not addressing, that is any kind of security or fencing down around the garden. So I just want people to understand is kind of, there's three phases, there's three different areas. We're just taking care of that one that I talked about. And as far as any new playground equipment on that main elementary playground, we're going to try to see what kind of savings that we can save from this project. John may not spend it all. We would like that. But once that temp building has to come out, and I think at that time we could really look at how to redo that playground, modernize it, get rid of some of that old equipment that's been there 20 years. But I think we should understand that's maybe the next phase when the temp building comes out.
That makes sense. Don't want to put something in only to redo the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think also to that point, we had a lot of discussion about the idea of, revisioning that space at the time that it actually does become vacant. And as opposed to spending money now visioning, designing, developing a plan that in a year or 2 years, depending on how things go, absolutely, you're going to want to evaluate it again. And would hate for you to be hamstrung by, a thought that we've already invested and we need to just do it, as opposed to getting what makes sense at that time.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
And I would agree with Beth's comment about at some point we might just want to fundraise for that.
Yep. Christina, did you have, I couldn't tell if you were raising your hand or just stretching.
I was just falling apart.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm good. Having that kind of day.
So John,
go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say, so, what's your recommendation? I mean, we put a lot of faith in you, and we trust you to kind of guide us. So, what do you think?
I appreciate that. I think our recommendation was to award the base bid to Cemetery at $323,000 and change, and then give the board, with our input and benefit of additional input from Amy and Brian, to evaluate these alternates and determine if one or both of those make sense, and then attempt to incorporate those into the contract at the time that allows us to preserve that pricing.
Then let me ask you this, John. If we take a vote on the symmetry contract today, and we ask for maybe a more detailed recommendation with respect to the two alternates between now and the May meeting, and if we were to vote at the May meeting with respect to those, would we fit within the timeline, or could we fit within the timeline so that we get the?
It's gonna be close. It's gonna be close, Jack. But I think we can have that discussion with Cemetery, and they'll provide us some grace with respect to that. We can't expect contractors to hold pricing forever, and so we pick a number that seems reasonable at the point of bid process to allow us to have some level of deliberation. But that doesn't mean that at 36 or 38 days the cost goes up and
Right.
we have to start over. So I think if, following this meeting, I would absolutely communicate to Cemetery our intent to evaluate those further, and bring it back to the board at the May meeting for additional action. And then I think the only other item to note is, as it stands currently, our contractors are scheduled to be done by the end of July. And if we may be able to get more time in order to make our decision, but that also may affect some of those elements with respect to schedule. So I'll want to understand how those work together, so that I can advise you accordingly.
Jack, can I wanted to just interject about the contract. It's with our counsel. DCS got it to our counsel, our legal counsel, in time. I reached out this morning. He said he'd been overwhelmed with work and had not had a chance. So none of his proposed revisions.
Surprise.
Yeah, none of his, as I'm aware myself, from reviewing. So it's a standard contract, and I as I review these for my job for boards, I tend to be somewhat dissatisfied with these contracts, and so I generally have significant revisions. I don't know if Bill will, but I anticipate that that's the case. So I wouldn't want to approve a contract tonight that we haven't seen. Maybe pick a contractor or whatever, but as to approving a contract, I think we should allow our council time to revise provisions that might not be so advantageous to us.
Right. Or maybe, we could approve the bid amount subject to council's negotiation of specific terms, and allow you or I or both or whomever to be able to say, no, there's been enough material changes that we're going back to the board.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even have changes because we don't have the initial one, so we wouldn't even know what changes there were.
But I'd sure like to be able to give John, if we were inclined to go with John's recommendation, as crazy as that may sound, but if we were going to go with his recommendation and go with symmetry, I'd like to be able to, even if it was a tentative approval, give him the ability to go back and to then go back to our council and say, okay, we've approved this in principle. You got to get it done.
Yep, I agree. And he did say he had Thursday and Friday set aside and that he would have it done. So,
yeah, I said that to people today too.
Yeah, I know.
No, I didn't. Say that.
And but yeah, so I didn't mean to reject anything. I don't want to delay things, but I just wanted to put that out there about we haven't seen it. So
Yeah, I think that it would be wholly appropriate for the board, if they're so inclined, to take action on the recommendation to condition it on formal approval of the form of agreement by council and the board. And that gives you the flexibility to evaluate that as you'd like. It is in many ways the AIA base contract. However, it does have the benefit of what I call our DCS custom revisions, at not as much at the contract level, but at the general conditions level. So it's not just a stock off the shelf. And we have the benefit of dealing regularly with about a dozen legal counsel for various districts and charters, and so there tends to be a dirty snowball effect if we let everybody work from the same. But we've had the benefit of working through Bill's office before on similar types of agreements, and so this is a template that is going to be somewhat familiar based on that.
All right, anybody else have any thoughts, comments, questions?
The only thing I wanted to ask, Jack, I know you said defer the conversation about the two contingencies, but it seemed like the teachers were pretty adamant that to use that south space in the summer, we needed those shade structures. Is that one that we want to just approve, or do people feel like they still need additional information to do that?
That was my question too, Becky. I think I got the same sense that the staff had some strong opinions and felt strongly about the outdoor shading. So I think that one did sound maybe mission critical or close there. So that one might be something we would go ahead and talk about sooner rather than later.
I think the discussion at the design level committee, and I'm sure I know there's been more that I wasn't a part of, but was that maybe there would be an alternative to these rather expensive shade coverings that might provide the shade, but I don't know if we moved past that and there was some determination about that.
Yeah, I think quite honestly, at the point when we're going through the bid process, without, certainty of what the bid results are, it's beneficial for us to establish some items that are discrete cost elements. Doesn't mean that we don't necessarily want them, but we want to know what the value of them is or might be. So at this point, I think it's our belief that roughly 20,000, 23,000 a piece for concrete foundation, steel structure, heavy, polyester, canvas, canopy structures is not a bad price. If they would have been 70 or 80,000, I think we would have perhaps offered a word of caution and thought maybe we should maybe look at some other options. At this point, I would not offer hope that we would find a more cost-effective, durable option.
Or potentially
Yeah,
time effective. So I think sometimes staff come up with very innovative ways of managing around, the need, but is it worth the time and energy? And sometimes maybe not.
Right.
Yeah, and my only point to the board was that, I don't want anybody to feel like these two alternatives are being, like there's a forced decision at this point. If people think they have enough information for one or both, more than happy to vote on it. I just don't want it to feel like, it's a yay or nay now and you never can get more information.
And John, you said that those two alternatives are not included when we talk about those 3 buckets. If we would add those 2 alternatives, that's going to be taking money from another bucket, or was that 970,000? Were those alternatives included in that 970?
Yeah, those. Let me just double check here. See how we populated this. Yeah, so we have about 90, almost 96,000 of, call it not contingency but unallocated in that 977. So that would allow us to get either of the 2 but not both.
Thank you, John.
And maybe another question for the second alternative, just to ask, I did not remember any strong opinions that I've heard in the past about that pathway, but then again, I don't know those conversations. Do we know if there's any strong opinions or need there? I know the shade structures, I've heard that before. That wasn't shocking, but the other one is new. Is there anything strongly opinionated out there?
Well, Christine, let me interject because I offered false information. We do have, I wasn't reading my budget sheet correctly. We do have both of those alternates figured in our budget at 977. So you at 977 have enough funds available to do both of those. Sorry.
And I guess I would just say, and I think Brian would agree with me, is that we've got to have some sort of shade out there. Those kids will melt. There's like nothing.
Right.
Look, I think the shade's a done deal.
I think
shade or a water feature, one or the other.
The question now, I think, is going to be, do we agree on the second since it's already in the budget? Do we defer on that one? That seems to be the topic.
Yeah.
Now. And the conversation comes along.
I agree with Christina. I don't think I've heard anything regarding that before. So I don't know if there's a strong pull in our community that we need that at this point.
Right. Without that, I've already heard that strong opinion. I'm wondering if that would be one that we would maybe investigate a little bit further. I don't know that I'd feel as strongly on that one. Okay.
From just the sound of it, it sounds like something that would be really nice and helpful. It also sounds like something that's almost $100,000. That might be one that I wouldn't mind taking another month and doing a little bit of, walking in the back and talking to Brian, talking to Amy, maybe talking to some staff and seeing how it would really be used before we decide on that.
I think the one of the backgrounds was to be ADA compliant. If you're going to use that for classroom, you need to have it to be ADA compliant. So I think rather than like a landscape path or something, it has to be cement. John, I think it has to be cement, right? So I think eventually if you're going to use that to build a next phase of the program, or that third phase as Brian has referred to it, I think that was the reasoning.
And that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
And I think the beautiful thing of it being, cast in place concrete, it isn't a long lead material. I'm sure that we have opportunities, even if we don't do it as part of this project. If you want to do it 6 months from now, it of itself is not a complicated project. You could do it at almost any time. And I think even if you were to wait until, 3 weeks before school and said, yeah, we want to do it, we could probably get it done. So, if my sense, if I were in your shoes, I would hold off on that one, knowing that I don't really think that you pay a penalty if you decide in a week to a month or two that you really do want it. But by then you have the benefit of gaining more clarity with respect to budget, other priorities, research, discussion, and can go into it maybe slightly more comfortable.
That would be my preference.
Yeah, mine as well. All right, anybody want to bring this to a head?
So let me give you what the number would be. So it would be the base bid of $323,659 plus the alternate number one of $46,450 for a total of $370,109. So that would be how you'd want to structure a motion, I think.
I move to approve the base bid of $323,659, as well as the alternate number one shade structure bid of $46,450 to Symmetry Builders, subject to council specific terms.
Second.
I think that's it.
Second.
Well done.
Okay, sorry. Roll call. Here we go. Jack Llewellyn,
Yes.
Brittany Horseman,
Yes.
Lisa Myers, yes. Robin Morrissey,
Yes.
Beth McDonald,
Yes.
Christina Grant,
Yes.
Brandon Smith,
Yes.
Becky Springstead. Oh, sorry. Oh, Becky, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, yes.
There you go. Sorry, that might have been on my end. And Carmen has joined us. Carmen Zinter.
Thank you, yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Excellent. So the balance of my update report is just to give a status of the North Campus design process. So we have our next round of sort of design update. Oh, we lost Jack. Design update and analysis scheduled for May 4th. Kara from HCM and Brian and Amy and I and a couple of their key middle school staff folks are going to get together, evaluate where we stopped or paused the design of that facility in general, which also includes the grounds. Make sure that we incorporate the development of the curriculum for that facility with the concept for the facility, and provide direction to HCM to complete the design process. And so we're shooting for, a sort of late summer completion so that we can go to market for bidding as well as submit for permitting and get ourselves in a position to allow the board, if you so choose, to initiate that next round of funding and get that work kicked off.
John, kind of a broad question for you. Obviously, lots of things can happen between now and then, now and completion. But if we were saying that we really wanted to have, the middle school by the fall of 2022, is there anything that you see right now that says that's an unrealistic proposition, or there are things that are going to make that exceedingly difficult? Again, recognizing all the things that can happen, I'm just asking, as we sit here now, is there an impediment that we're not aware of or not thinking about?
Well, I think that, Jack, you've got a little bit of experience with respect to the county and going through the kind of site plan process, right? So that's always a tricky circumstance, and so they can attempt to make our lives hell, or they can attempt to be good neighbors. I think that's always a process until it's in the can, that I'm going to be a little uncertain about. Once we kick off this next level of design, and we know we actually have a building footprint, exterior improvements that are identified, then we're going to go back to the county, present the project, and see what they need and want to submit. I think the bigger challenge is probably going to be reconciling our curricular and programmatic needs with our funding sources, and that's just the nature of the beast. So it's not a shot at any of the leadership, prior or currently. I just think that we've got needs and appetite that are greater than the funding, and a process that allows us to come to the right balance of those is going to be tricky, and it could be time consuming, because I don't think it's going to be necessarily a slam dunk. So for me, that's the biggest one that I've sort of got my eye on, from the standpoint of design oversight and helping to manage our process.
Appreciate that. Any other questions for John?
Great.
Stunned us
You
into
guys made
silence.
my day. I took a pretty good chunk out of your meeting time. I apologize, but
No,
think
no,
we've got,
John.
we've got
this
progress.
this is very helpful. As you know, this is one of the the biggest things on our agenda, and so your guidance on this has been helpful and appreciated.
Great. Excellent. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll let you all get to it.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thank you.
John.
See ya.
All right, and with that, let's go back to the agenda and do the principal's report. Mr. Bryan.
Well, I kind of like listening for a while. That's nice. I'll make this pretty quick. There's not a lot new right now. If you heard the town hall, we're kind of on hold for how next year is designed. First, I want to start off with some celebrations. Hey, we got no classes in quarantine right now. Yay. Other schools are struggling, but we're back. That's nice. Tomorrow is Administrative Assistance Day. And I just want to say, as a front office, we feel more as a team than, say, different roles and stuff, but administratively, that's a good bunch. So I can't thank that front office group enough. It's been a long year, a lot of challenges. The school system itself has been entirely changed due to the pandemic, just on how we do things. And that's hard. Schools are a traditional based kind of system, and I feel in the front office and the way all four of us work together, I can't thank them enough for being flexible. So thank you, Amy, Veronica, and Christine, because in my mind, it's if the front office is okay, chances are the school's okay. If the front office is in disarray, well, you get the picture. So to me, that's imperative. So that's a celebration. So thank you. We have a new superintendent in Jeffco. Tracy Dorland comes to us from, and I didn't write it down, but I think it's Adam 12. And she's deputy superintendent there, but she started early. And so she came over, and I think Monday was her first day. We'll see where that goes. Change is all just part of the gig. So we'll see what that superintendent brings to the table as far as, especially for charters. I'm always interested in knowing, will the superintendent reach out to charters? So I will keep you posted. I think I mentioned this the last time, but we're there's a lot of buzz in the charter world, and I'm kind of blending the charter and the update together. One is the legislative piece of where the school district can solely review a charter without the state Board of Education being involved. So that is a piece of legislation that's got everybody all fired up, and that's a concern. And so the league, the Colorado League of Charter Schools, is part of this ACT network. They just sent me an email today with they're really trying to promote parent advocacy. There's some parent meetings coming up here in May, just to kind of get information out on the changing landscape of charters. And so I will pass that on to the board. I'll probably put out certain information in our newsletter coming up. But I think kind of the sacred ground charters have been on in Colorado for a long time. The boat's been rocked, and people are nervous. We want a check and balance system, and I think that's what you're going to hear a lot about. So keep your ears open to that, because that could change the way MPA does business down the road. We're about 80% on the vaccine as far as the staff. I know it's a touchy subject, but I do appreciate staff letting us know, because it's more than just did you get the vaccination. It's more about how do we staff a building in a pandemic, because if you have the vaccination and you get past the second shot and the 2 weeks, you don't have to be quarantined. Staffing's been a challenge. Amy will tell you that is a round-the-clock job of just trying to keep adults in the building so that we can supply education to the families that drop their kids off. It makes it look seamless from the outside, but it is not. And there's always someone moving in and out depending on the quarantine situation. So it's tough. And that's one way that we can keep the doors open next year at a much higher rate. The other thing is we're working on safety this month. So, you know, you could have clicked into the little blue link there, seen 3 different kids talk about safety. Next month, I think it's kindness. Don't quote me on that. But I've just been enjoying talking to kids about it. And they give great answers. So I'm just going to keep going down that path. And then I just pull out a select few that make it for staff meetings. And student voice is powerful. I'd love to see more and more student voice in what we do at NPA. Yeah, we're in the middle of goals and evaluation. I'm behind. So, you know, there's only 5 weeks of school left. So it is crunch time for us. Staff survey, you know, every year. So Lisa, I think you were helping me kind of formulate that. Okay. I'd like to get that out maybe at the April 30th in-service, at least kind of announce it, and then get it in people's inboxes from there. And so Lisa, I'll reach back out to you, make sure I have all my ducks in a row on that, but we really want to collect that data point.
Yeah, I think it's ready to go if we don't have any other changes, just a Google form. But yeah, happy to connect on that.
Giving it some parameters, some deadlines, things like that. So,
sure, absolutely.
I appreciate your help on that. The 30th, you know, the PTA is thrown together and some parents, again, staff breakfast. Appreciate that totally. And we're going to wrap up some of our National Center work with Montessori and kind of start some planning for next year. Kind of talk about, okay, how did we have to change things through cohorting, social distancing, the pandemic in general, and what do we feel we can start bringing back? That really adds that liveliness to a classroom. And so we're going to start those conversations, start getting a jump on that. Roundtable, we had we kind of closed out roundtable for the year. There's a lot to finish this year. We got to make sure we understand where all of our kids are at in the learning spectrum. that the report cards are done accurately. We look at our data. You know, we got testing coming up here, and we're trying to build a summer school with some of the federal monies. So we're really focusing on learning, academics, and so that's what we really got to keep our time for. So we're going to do a summer retreat and roundtable with through pros and cons, or plus. We kind of did a plus delta exercise at our last meeting. What worked during this last year, then what didn't. And that's kind of the center of our work in August. We're going to do a retreat on August 4th. And we'll do about a 6-hour get together. Some members are passing the baton to others, and others are coming on. Some are staying for a second year. I just love how that team works, and they jump right in when they need to. The last last bullet under staff is our hiring process. So Amy and I, we've been just, again, diving in and systemizing things as transparent as we can. So, and what I mean by transparency is it's got to be a document. It's got to be a living document that you, the board members, can say, hey, what's the hiring process? And how do you interview? How do you do this? So that we're not just willy-nilly just picking people for employment at MPA. So when you click into that, you'll notice there's a pre-screen, typically done with me and Amy. And after kind of these pre-interviews, do they look like a high-quality candidate? It is passed on to teams. Teams do independent interviews. We set up questions in kind of a scoring matrix. And either Amy or say like Beth sit in on those interviews. I do not, because principals tend to sway committees and panels in one direction or another, just by our sheer presence. And so we really want to get a 3-part process in place. And then at the end, they make a panel or a team makes a recommendation. We do background checks, make sure, again, no surprises. And then either Amy or I kind of go down the path of final interview, and then an offer was made. So that way it's a process that can be used anywhere. Now emergencies, you know, like, oh, we had someone leave and we got to replace someone tomorrow, that doesn't work. But all emergency type placements all go back up for rehire at the end of the school year or over the summer. So anyway, it's about creating systems that can be passed on from admin to admin, from board to board, and so that's one of them. So your feedback's always welcome. As I said, CMAS is pretty well wrapped up. We're just doing makeups, and we're kind of finishing any kind of remote type kids that are coming in and testing. So Heather, that's another celebration. I really have to give a shout out to Heather and Cindy, and down in the library, they just made the magic happen and figured out how to do all the cohorting and CMAS. So they did a great job. Great job. So we got our last assessments coming. As you heard John say, we really got to kind of back up now to the middle school conversation with design. We've come a long way, and Christina, you can jump in at any point here. I think we got kind of a nice outline of what a middle school vision kind of looks like. And now we have to make sure the HCM, DCS understand any kind of tweaks and changes. So it's time to kind of get that in a place where they can work on it over the summer. I'm very adamant about not having the staff engaged in any kind of committee work in June or July. I think that is apparent after the 15-month run we've had here. So I'd like to kind of get this in a place where Amy and I can take over the summer. And really what's next in the summer is we're going to run some financial scenarios for you. We're going to say, okay, with this type of programming, here's all the people that have to be hired, here's the costs, here's what we feel we can enroll, here's scenario B, here's scenario C. I'd love to have that for the board by your summer retreat, whenever that is scheduled, probably sometime in July. That way you got a design that's kind of off. Again, big thinking design. You'll have some financial scenarios, staffing scenarios, curriculum scenarios. And then after that, it really kind of comes down to, are we going to be able to pull this off with October count, right? So that's where we're just trying to get everything into a stationary place and ready to go by August. I kind of heard John that. If we can get everything in kind of a design mode, if things are looking good, then we can start pulling permits and things like that so we can get ahead of it. But enrollment is the key here. I think the rest is I wouldn't call it an easy lift, but it's going to be exciting to have that conversation come at the board retreat of what this middle school might look like. Financials. Well, we're getting there. There's really not a ton to add. I mean, Amy can jump in here. We're still waiting on the state legislature to finalize everything. I'm just kind of jumping to all over the place here, and Amy can kind of clean up, but we kind of thought we might get $1,000 more than we received this year. Doesn't look like the case. Maybe $500 per student per PPR than last year. That is a real possibility. Grant money for ESSER 2, you can see the 4 bullets there. We're creating a summer school, we're creating an academic support coordinator. That's going to be Erin Woolard, so she's going to jump in, stay out of the classroom. Any kiddo that's had COVID slide, any kiddo that's gone backwards in our data set, she's all over it. We're already creating that system. Our MTSS team, that's another team I want to celebrate. We're going deep into the end of the year here. That is a team that typically is done maybe March, but they meet every Tuesday. We talk about kids, and I tell you what, that team is getting good. So with Erin's leadership, some grant money, I feel we're building a safety net for our kiddos. We're figuring out how to teach kids who wind up in quarantines. The state of Colorado pushed out a document about if you're going to go into the remote learning business, that means you want full-time remote kids. There's a hefty document with all the rules. It is not an easy task. We got away with a lot with the pandemic, but now that remote learning's here to stay, of course they made rules, and that's because it tends to get abused. So what happens is parents go, hey, I want to be part of your school, but we're going to be in Hawaii for 3 months. Can I get my remote learning there? And that's not really how the state of Colorado is going to roll with it. This is not for the convenience of the family. It is for the convenience of health and safety, okay? So there's a bunch of accountability if you want to be in the remote learning business, which we already decided as a school we are not, unless the pandemic throws us a curveball this summer. So just FYI, that looked like to be a lot of work to make sure that the audits are clean and all the students are accounted for in remote learning next year. I know I kind of jumped around here a little bit. Amy had put out the enrollment, and I just want everybody to understand that enrollment sheet. When you look at it, and I can put it up on the screen, but if today was October count, we would be at 369. What's the problem with that number? It's not 370. And that is with all the tours we're doing. Lisa, you're part of those. We're on those every month. We have another one next month. The phone rings every day. Veronica's working her magic. But we really have lost second and third graders. So if you look at the chart, the pandemic really drew down. Typically, we would always have 60 kids in second grade and third grade. Those are hard kids to find. Those are just not the kids coming into or being requested to be part of MPA. If you look, our fourth grade numbers look fairly solid on the projections. At 52, we're over. We only project 50. We're actually thinking we'll hit 50, somewhere in there. remember, things change over the summer, but I think parents are really kind of making a commitment much more than they did, obviously, last year. Fifth grade doesn't look too bad. Obviously, sixth grade's always been a concern. That's not a surprise, but the real surprise in the enrollment set is our second and third graders. So that's why you're seeing, and homeschool. Homeschool's way down. It kind of fluctuates. We'll gain a few, lose a few. It's just kind of all over the place. So again, if today was October count, it would be 360. So as a board, I think we just have to have continued discussions of how else do we reach out? How else? I mean, we're in the enrollment game all the way through August, okay? If not into September. So we have time. We keep working on it, but I don't think it's just something that we can sit idly by and say, oh, it's going to happen. We could gain 15 kids over summer. We could lose 20 kids over summer. I don't know. That's the wild card. So does it make me nervous? Yeah, because 369 is not 370. So that's the reality, friends. We don't have enough pad at this point to take our foot off the gas.
Hey, Brian, two quick things.
Sure.
One for the new members, can you explain the significance of 370?
Yes.
And then, and part two is, am I reading the homeschool right that the projection is a reduction in more than 50% from this year?
Well, Amy, help me out here. I think we're sitting right now.
No, it's not a reduction, it's actually an increase.
Right. We went from about 55 last year to what, 28, somewhere between 28 and 30 this year. I could be quoting that wrong.
I think it might even be less than that, Ryan.
Right.
Okay.
So it was about almost I would say 50% reduction last summer on numbers. So then they've kind of come back up, but then all of a sudden, some of them kind of jump over to another school or over to our main building, which helps us still, but it doesn't help homeschool stability. Is like, we'd like to get back to 50 where we were pre-pandemic. So that continues to be a challenge, because homeschool families, they're just hard to find right now. So that's, again, another conversation of how we can, Jen and I talk every week, but it might need a little bit bigger lift than what her and I are able to think and do at this point. What's magic about 370? Well, new members, it's this simple. Back in time, here we go. We really started looking at MPA North about February of 2020. The reason that's important is this building came up. The construction project that we had looked at on the main campus was more expensive. The building across the street was cheaper per square foot. So we rolled the dice and went with, hey, let's refinance our debt and buy this building with our 5B funds. So 5B monies from the 2018 Jeffco election, where schools, especially charter schools, got about $3 million. We have 17 charters in Jeffco, and each one of us got the same amount, no matter of size. Everyone got the same amount. So that seemed like a no-brainer. We paid cash for that building, and now we just need to refinance our current debt with a better deal. Well, the pandemic proved a little tricky. Bonds weren't selling at one point, so we went with a conventional bank. Brittany, you can jump in at any time. But with banks, there's always conditions, and then condition is enrollment. Typically, we enroll somewhere around 380, what they call PPR. So that means these are full-time students, and homeschools only count as half-time. So if you have 55, say we have 60 homeschoolers, they only count 30 as full-time students. If that makes sense. So when you do the math, you always have to take the half out. But that's it in a nutshell. Is they looked at historical documents, said we said also as a board and as a school we could hit 370. It seemed to be our benchmark of enrollment as far as funded students. Okay, that doesn't include preschool, because, you know, we're a school up over 400, right around 400, but when it come to funding this year, we only got paid for 339 PPR, okay, per pupil revenue. So we need to be at 370 for the bank to release construction funds. Not 369, 370 or higher.
They
So
agreed
otherwise-
to, they agreed to make it in a phased draw, kind of like a construction loan where you draw as you go. And so we got the first amount, but they said because of our numbers were declining through the pandemic, they said they changed the terms and said we won't release that second bucket of money until you can prove in October that you have 370 kids. And even then we'd have to decide whether that's a good decision financially or whatever, but that's required to do the middle school.
Right. So anyway, that's why enrollment is key. I mean, obviously every charter is about enrollment, but for us, this one's very critical because if we don't get the funds that we need, then we have some big decisions on what to do with the North property. We wait another year, yada, yada, yada. So we're working really hard to stabilize our enrollments and enroll students in areas that typically we don't enroll. So like we hardly ever enroll fourth, fifth, and sixth graders who are non-Montessorians, but we are picking up more students in those areas. And we think we can onboard just fine. We do have staff that have done well with that in the past, and we're not talking huge numbers, but every kiddo can. So anyway, that's where we're at. Amy, you want to jump in on the financial piece here?
Yeah, sorry I didn't bring your report home with me, but I think the biggest thing right now is working the budget for next year, and the finance committee, we're meeting on the 30th, just because we don't have confirmation of what PPR is going to be next year, but we have a pretty good idea now. So we'll go through those scenarios and propose something for the May meeting. I do know that Jeffco's waiting for us to submit our budget for next year, but I kind of feel like this is a year of exception where they're just going to have to kind of wait for us to figure that out. So we're working hard on that. The ESSER grants are really going to help. It's allowing Brian and I to really scrub what we can move to that grant and free up for our general fund. So I don't know what else, Brian.
Well, we are waiting for some PPR to come back to us. The state of Colorado saved money by 5% of students across the state just disappeared. They didn't come into public schools. So the state saved all that revenue. And so they're trying to, you can see on my report, they're trying to give an additional PPR back to schools this financial year. So that'll help once we see that. But we are looking at a deficit. So we're trying to end the year out. At one point we were, 300,000, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
The whole
200, and I think we're down to about 130 right now.
130 right now, so that you'll see
under
that.
100.
Right, you'll see that at the very bottom of Amy's P&L report. You'll see it in yellow down there. So that's the number we're working with now, which is huge. And I keep telling the staff that our goal is once we, as a finance committee, and then come to the board, hopefully we can stabilize people's salaries for next year. You know, we want a balanced budget. That's number one. Number two, we got to get our pay for experience bonus or stipend to our assistants. And then our third part is we really need to look at COLA, or cost of living, and then steps after that. So we're trying to phase things back in, but it's really hard when the state's not giving us the exact number, because also new board members being a charter, we don't get our full PPR since we're a charter. 5% of that goes to Jeffco. So they skim 5% off the top. So our PPR is 5% less. And remember, we also pay for our own facilities. So that's just kind of the gig of being a charter. We do contract services with the district, which we need. We need certain level of services that make us function and run, and they're good to us in a lot of ways. And so 5% doesn't sound like much, but in a budget crisis here, you're like, oh, that would have been nice to have. But anyway, so that's kind of the financial. Any questions there? I do want to bring up the MPA North. We are seeing some roof leaks here and there. Amy and Daniel have done work enough to get the fire alarm phone lines put in so we can get a fire alarm monitoring system on over there. That was just something that has taken a while for that to get into place. And obviously we have, we just need to maintain that building until we can turn it over to John at DCS and they can start swinging hammers. But in the meantime, we need fire protection over there, and we really need the water turned back on. We got a lot of landscape over there that went through one super hot summer last summer, and if we don't get water to some of those trees and stuff, we talked to John about this, and he goes, well, it may cost you $5,000 to put the water back on, but you might lose $30,000 to $50,000 in landscaping. So we need to kind of look at that. Obviously every summer's hot now. So with the water turned off, because we found out that water problem and the whole, water valve issue.
Yeah.
Where we couldn't pass with Denver water. So.
Was that resolved?
No.
Yeah, but it was turned off.
It's just, that was the result. The problem is we just can't, we're not going to pay Daniel to run buckets of water over there and dump it on a bunch of trees. I'm not worried about the grass. It's the trees, the shrubs, the things that we're going to save on the outside. We're really not wiping out. If you look at the architectural plans, they are keeping most of the landscape. And so I just don't think it's going to survive a second summer.
Look, Brian, I mean, I think, and again, anybody on the board can disagree. I think that's just one of those things you got to, that's your decision. If it makes sense and that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. I mean, we took that when we bought the building. We knew there were going to be expenses, and
Sure.
It hasn't flowed exactly how we intended, but we can't let it sit over there as a dilapidated building with issues. So just do what you need to do.
We will.
Agreed.
And we just understand that affects that balanced budget issue.
Yeah.
So anyway. We've been talking, Amy and I meet with Daniel every week, and so far that building's held up nice, and it's doing what it's doing, and so we're just trying to turn it over in good shape to DCS for when they can start construction. The other thing too is coming up, we got a parent, you probably saw the email today, but I finally got coordinated with the National Center of Montessori in the public sector, and we're doing another parent ed night coming this Monday. I think this is like the third or the fourth Monday. I've done some kind of town hall parent meeting. Growing and Changing was on Monday for 5th and 6th grade parents. So nice high level of awkwardness there. But no, we have fostering independence in children. And so that should be a great topic with summer coming. So we're going to be doing Zoom breakouts. Aaron Woolard is helping me coordinate the summer school project. It's a remote summer school. We're not bringing kids onto the campus with construction. If parents want an in-person summer school, there's the Jeffco in-person summer school. So she's helping me build that. Very excited to have that going. Just wanted the board to be understanding that we are working remotely in June and July, so that the front vestibule can be, there's going to be a lot of dust and dirt, so we're gonna be out June 1st. So as soon as teachers are done on the 28th, right before Memorial Day, the rest of us in the front office will be working remotely. I don't know what next year looks like. just yet. So we'll get there. And then you heard the roundtables got a summer retreat scheduled. So I guess my next question is, when's the board retreat? So Amy and I know when to get you some middle school information.
Yeah, and we expect to talk about that tonight. So hopefully
Well, that's
we'll,
it.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
any
hopefully we'll get that
questions
tonight.
for me? Yeah. All right,
Okay.
friends.
Thank you,
So
Brian.
Thank you.
hearing that we can't wait on pushing for enrollment, is there something specific you were looking for the board to start doing or pull together a committee, or what are you,
You know,
we can do?
that's a loaded question, and that might be something just to keep in the back of your mind, and then maybe we can talk a little bit more in depth. But Amy and I have rolled Lisa into it a little bit more, since she's part of the tours, the virtual tours that we do. We're not able to do physical tours over the summer because of the construction, and so that's also kind of somewhat of a limitation. Without kids in the building, it would have been a perfect time to do physical tours, but now that we're, you need to have a hard hat on to be in there. So we're just trying to get clever here. What can we put on our website? How do we advertise? How do we explain all the good things that we're doing? That's why earlier in the year we had kind of the YMPA, and we've been shooting little videos and putting stuff out, and then Lisa made that little video primary. I just think the work has to continue in that range, in that niche. So I don't know, Lisa, you have any ideas?
I think anything we can do this summer, I mean, this is when a lot of the movement happens. I think if you consider we're at 330 right now, we're up to 369. So we've made a swing in the right direction. I think we have to pause and recognize that. But we still got some more swinging to do. But if we can continue the virtual tours over the summer, that's an advantage. Anything we can do to give our school an advantage is what we need to focus on. But we'll put our brainstorming hats on.
Lisa, one of the things that I was just thinking, we had the one cleanup day at MPA North, and I think that was great for community building and stuff. Maybe if we could plan another one for early summer to get people talking in their neighborhood, maybe that would be kind of a low-hanging fruit of a way to at least kind of continue to build the community.
Yeah. I think community building is a great idea. It's one aspect is getting new families. The other aspect is keeping our existing families. It's a two-part equation, and you handle those two very different ways. So to your point, Jack, community building, and I think I'm transitioning over PTA. PTA has got a lot of ideas for community building that I think would be important too. So
Nice. Okay.
we're getting there. We'll get some rhythm. But that's a good idea, Jack. And also, I was going to say, my other volunteer is the scouts are always looking for community service. If that building needs a good scrubbing inside, like cleaning wise or whatever, don't hesitate to reach out. We can get either able bodies or masked cohorts or something in there to, I know it's about to be torn up. Well, hopefully it's about to be torn up, but in the meantime, just to keep it up to date.
Okay.
We can always come up with able bodies. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Brian. You'll notice that next on the calendar, or on the agenda, excuse me, we're kind of two things: a middle school planning, a recap, and then kind of the MPA North construction and usage discussion or recap. And from my vantage point, most of what I wanted to address in those two bullets have been dealt with either in Brian's presentation or in John's, or a combination thereof. Does anybody want to add anything, Christina or Brian, or does anybody have any specific questions that they had that haven't been addressed?
think it covered the things that I was thinking as well, aside from the outstanding question about a strategic retreat dates and getting those on the calendar. But we can also cover that maybe
We'll get there.
later during the board calendar or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, hearing none, let's move on. We're going to talk about the new members and the election results, but first I wanted to talk, and Brandon, you can shoot me in advance, because I don't think I told you that I was going to ask you to talk, but we had the election for the 2 open seats, because Christina and Lisa are served their terms and are moving off and doing other things for the school. And then it also came up that Brandon is going to be resigning after the board meeting, or at the board meeting in May, for his own set of reasons. And I wanted to give him an opportunity in 32 minutes or less to explain, to the extent that he wants, what's happening with him, and then we can translate that into a welcoming of the new members.
Okay, so I guess that means it's time for me to talk, right, Jack? I'll be very brief, because if I laid out all of my reasoning, YouTube would delete this video. But I will say that one of the beautiful things about Montessori education is that you can follow the child, and that's the heart of how Maria Montessori arrived at her philosophy. And so following our children, following our conscience with regard to how the state is responding to external stimuli, requires that the kiddos be in a different environment. So Jack is on the hook to get beers with me at some point, and if anybody wants to know more, I'm more than happy to share, but I don't think that this is the right forum for me to really air everything. One thing that I will say is that when people leave, it is sometimes felt that, like, well, what did we do? How did we screw up? And I have to say that MPA has been an incredible place. MPA did not screw up in any way, shape, or form. We, as a board and as a school, and we have followed the rules as they've been given to us. And if I said more, I'd be saying too much. So.
Yeah, and then just to clarify, so your kids are going to go to a homeschool setup,
possibly,
and not, but are not going to be enrolled at MPA next year, and because of that,
I have to leave.
You have to leave, right? Okay.
And I am correct in that, right? I cannot serve on the board as a parent if I don't have children enrolled in the school.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and obviously, we as a board, and I speak for everybody, I think, in saying that we have appreciated your contribution. Your technological input has been invaluable, and your contributions to the discussion. So we'll miss you. We'll miss your kids, but we also respect every parent's decision to do what they think is best. So. But with that, I will transition and hand it over to Christina to kind of talk about the election results, the new members, kind of the onboarding, and I'm going to sneak away for about 30 seconds. So, Christina, it's all yours.
Okay. So the election results were announced yesterday, and right, we welcome Anna and Justin into the terms starting in 2021 through 2024. So those are the terms that are onboarding in our May meeting, right, becoming official. We're sort of, I'll say hand the baton, but in some ways it might be like throw the ball and escape out the door. In addition to that, with Brandon's departure from the board, which I think is going to be effective officially with the May meeting as well, just to sort of simplify, the seat then would be open, and in discussion with Catherine, is willing to step in and help serve in that role, if appointed by the board. And so that would be the remainder of the term that Brandon was holding. So it would be the remaining 1 year, if I have not messed that up. Oh, fantastic. Okay. To be onboarded at the same time. So that would give us a nice, easy transition. Right, and quite handy for us, and thank you to everyone who's been willing to serve. So that being said, is there any, in terms of onboarding from the board, is there any questions, concerns? I can make a motion that we would appoint Catherine, unless anyone has any questions or other ideas, right? I don't want to look like a gift horse in the mouth. Yes. Good. All right, I'm not seeing any concerns now. I would move that we would appoint Catherine to the remainder of Brandon's term to be served beginning in May 2021 through May of 2022.
Second.
Jumped in there on that one, like before they run out of motion.
You really want to get out?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just want to.
Want to pass the baton and keep it, yeah, thank you.
Pass the baton.
All right, roll call on that motion then. So we have Jack Llewellyn.
Yes.
Brittany Horseman.
Yes.
Lisa Myers, yes. Robin Morrissey.
Yes.
Beth McDonald.
Yes.
Christina Grant.
Yes.
Brandon Smith.
Do I need to abstain on this one, or do I say yes?
No, I think you can.
Okay.
I think
Yes.
you can
Yes.
Yeah.
Becky Springstead.
Yes.
And Carmen Center.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes.
And
Welcome.
Christina, can I, and maybe you were going to say this, so I apologize, but the May meeting is a little bit of a hybrid meeting. So there's the transition, and what we'll kind of do is do old business, and then transition to new business and appoint officers and things. So it's a bit of a transition, but it'll all flow relatively seamlessly because Christina will handle it perfectly.
Well, we did have some conversations with each of the folks. I talked when we discussed, and we talked a little bit about how the May meeting would run, typically with the old business and new business. So fantastic point. I think we'll try to make that not terribly terrifying for the new folks coming in. And we're like, can you just make that motion? That'd be great. And what?
Okay.
Yeah. The only other thing I was just double checking. I think it's great to note not only was the election a valid election, but we had 39.1% of our community turn out and vote. And so I know we did some, last minute with the community meeting. I think I saw some signs out there on Fridays. So there was a lot of, good turnout, especially in those last few days. So thank you to everyone. I saw it in the teachers' newsletters out as well, just making it so we have a nice, smooth election. That was very kind and joyful to go through. So I don't think we have anything else from an onboarding aside from kind of just to make sure, maybe getting ahead of the May meeting, I remember there's probably some information with the policies and procedures we might want to send them, and probably most importantly, the thing we sign to get to them prior. So I don't have that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the email. You know, if everybody can set up their own, you know, kind of MPA dedicated email, that will, it's helpful because then you don't have to deal with open records issues if something should ever come up. But if you get that to Christina and I, then we'll have it and we can.
I'm seeing them come in the chat already, so I'll grab
there's two, yeah.
those. And we'll make sure. And 3, check that you guys are so on it. I'm so excited about your enthusiasm and willingness to jump in and take care of that. I'm still trying to recover from the election process, so I'm really like, oh, right, emails. Okay, so I got those. I'll send them out to the entire board so that everyone has each other's emails.
Okay, great. And again, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. I remember hopping on and going, what the hell is going on? So this is, you know, kind of seeing what happens, and then we're going to go through a couple more things. I think it'll be a good way to just have an idea of what's going on before you hop on and are asked to vote on things. So, but thank you. Moving on. Somebody else is leaving us. Won't say who, but her name's Robin. So we need to talk about just the process for the election of the new staff representative.
Well, I'm collecting names. Robin announced.
Successfully.
Yep. We're getting.
Good.
Do we have a couple of things? Maybe 1 or 2. But Robin told the staff at the April staff meeting, and so I think we've just done a vote through the staff, and once we confirm who that is, staff gives the thumbs up, then they join the May meeting, even though Robin's still on the board for May. Is that correct? And then the baton's passed.
Yeah, it's kind of the same process.
Right.
By the end of the May meeting, all the new people are in and the old people are out.
Right. So
Okay.
So that's already underway.
Awesome. I assumed it was, but thank you for confirming, and again, Robin, thank you for everything that you've done and all of your help and stuff, and we will miss you.
I know. You guys have been a great board. I really wanted to say that. I've worked with many of you in your capacities, and thank you. You guys have been awesome.
Okay, moving on. Budget and Finance Committee. Is there anything that we need to talk about that we haven't talked about or that won't be talked about in executive session? Let's see. Seeing nodding.
Not at all.
Heads, I'll say no. Okay. Committee reports. Anything that we need to talk about that hasn't been talked about? Anything new with SAC that we need to talk about?
Nope.
We're gonna have our meeting. You did, Brian, ask if we had set a date. We did. It's June 29th, Tuesday, for our next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it.
Monthly attendance meetings. Jeffco, we're going to pass on this month. JCSC, I don't think there was there anything this month on JCSC? No. And then anything that, Becky, that you want to talk about with PTA for this month? Or Lisa?
Yeah, I think Lisa can help pepper in as she's, stepping into her role within the PTA. But Mr. Bryan came to the meeting and did a nice recap for the parents that were part of the meeting this month and allowed them to ask questions. So I know that was greatly appreciated, and glad that he was able to spend the time with the PTA. And it sounds like there's a lot of talk of things that will be hopefully coming to celebrate the year and year end. And then, as Lisa was mentioning, try to get that sense of community again. So I would say that we'll probably be seeing things here over the next few weeks as various members of PTA try to pull together some celebrations and bring our community together.
Now, shamelessly plug Staff Appreciation Week, which is coming up. We had a parent take this on this year, and there's something planned for every single day of the week. So keep your eyes open for that, participate in that. If ever there was a year to roll out the red carpet for the staff appreciation, it would be this year. So that's going on, but yeah, community buildings of importance. We have PTA as new officers. I think we already reported on that, but that's about it.
Okay, great. I'm gonna move the board calendar above the executive session for a specific reason, which will become obvious in a minute. But Christina, do you want to take on both the board calendar and start talking about the retreat?
Yeah, let's see the board calendar. Anything of vital interest here? What month is it? Oh yeah, right. Okay, April. Good. Conducting the board meeting. Good job. Done. Posting the school budget. I think we talked about the status of that and all the things around that. So we'll continue to work on it. Board elections. Review of survey results coming out of SAC. Probably not quite yet. We've got the staff survey outstanding. Did we talk about parent surveys or anything there yet? No. Okay, Beth's saying we'll talk about that next month, maybe.
Well, we kind of have, I think the ball's been dropped on it, honestly. We haven't done anything with it. So we need to figure that out.
Something up there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll put that on my to-do list this week and I'll start bothering.
Okay. Well, I can maybe help with that part as well. I was noticing nobody threw their name in the hat for next year to be added to. It was one of the questions on the ballot, so wanted to also let you know that about SAC. Let's see. Annual community meeting. Done. Review and approve, is this still, gosh, I know I need to probably update some of these still. Review and approve annual charter addendum renewal with district along with district calculation of revenue and service expenses. Sounded very exciting. That's one of the ones I always look at Amy and she tells me what to do with that.
We'll do it with the budget.
Okay, with the budget. Fantastic. Previous quarters board minutes to the district.
I owe you those, Amy.
Yep.
I'll get them. And Jack, I'll get them to you for signature.
Okay.
Adding to my list.
We have conduct the board of directors exit survey, so yeah, we've not actually, I think, created one of those yet. If you want, I can tell you. No, wait. Okay. Yeah. Conduct our annual board retrospective. I think that would probably be one that would make sense to probably move into the strategic retreat kind of conversation anyway. So I'll make that update as well. And that's it for the April timeframe. This is a good time to touch base about, during the summer, we usually do a strategic retreat of some sort. I think we've got a good number of things on our plate this year to maybe talk about. Last year was a little bit smaller, but would leave that, like, what do you guys think about how long? And then maybe we pick a date.
Well, in my mind, middle school and middle school planning has to be priority one.
Number one, yeah.
And then there's lots of ancillary things we can do. I personally think if we could put aside one day on the weekend, for the better part of a day, we probably can get everything done, and that generally fits better with, most folks with kids and the like.
Right.
Again, if people really want a 2-day endeavor and want to do something on a Friday night and a Saturday, we could do that. I would much prefer, if we can, to just do a do a Saturday and try and do something like 10 to 4 or 10 to 5 and just get it done. Brittany, any thoughts?
I agree. I think it worked out well last year. I'd make a plug for if we can do it safely, if we can do it in person, because it was really hard last year remotely.
Totally agree. But I think we're just gonna have to play that by ear.
But if the school is doing construction, I don't know if we might want to just have a plan B backup if there's a place that we want to reserve when we pick a date, the library or something, a room or something, just if we can't use the school.
Well, you can use MPA North if the water gets back on.
That's true. I forgot.
That's true.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Timing wise, typically, right, June or July, I think we've got a little bit of a balance here if we're thinking about where we start in terms of picking a date. Mr. Bryan, maybe enough time to run some scenarios and prepare the data. So maybe not June 5th or something like that, because that's probably not going to work. But there's probably a not too late in the summer as well to feed any info out of that strategic retreat into the design and kind of build and that kind of process. So Brittany or Jack, any idea of how no later than you would want to go?
When's the roundtable meeting? When's your roundtable retreat, Brian? August 4th?
Yeah, it was in
August
August.
4th, sorry.
Okay. Maybe 2 weeks before that?
Yeah, if we could do the 19th or the 26th, can people do that?
Are you thinking June 19th or 26th?
That was July.
Isn't the 19th?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was looking at the wrong calendar. So
The 17th or the 24th? Yeah.
No, I can do either of those.
I can do that's good for me.
I can only do the 24th.
I'm here in the 24th.
Any objections to the 24th?
Nope. 24th.
Gone. Let's tentatively set it for the 24th.
All right, that is done. I have held the strategic planning piece on my plate for the 5 years I've been on the board. If it helps the board, I'll offer up to facilitate. I can be a pure facilitator and allow the board to be board members. So if that is something, since I'm rolling off, we can touch base on it again later and see if we wanted it that way or not.
Well, I refuse to do a retreat that doesn't include postcards and/or Post-it notes. Sorry, that was an inside joke.
It's like my greatest win right there. Jack's talking about Post-it notes. I mean, especially if it's in person. I mean, there has to be Post-it notes. And I guess if it's at the North Campus, though, the bar is going to be real light. So that was I don't know.
Right.
Okay, so that is then handled in terms of board calendar.
Okay. We are now going to move into an executive session in order to discuss personnel matters. And I think it would be most appropriate to not have the 3 new members go into the executive session. But we will have an executive session, I believe, next time as well. And for the new members, the idea, executive session, well, let me back up. Colorado has an open records law, blue sky law, so all proceedings that discuss policy have to be public and have to be available to the public, with a few very limited exceptions, one of which is the personnel matters. And long before anybody on this board was a board member, there were issues with respect to open records, and so we are very, very careful about making sure that every time there's anything done, we do it that way. And again, since we're going to have another one next month, you'll kind of see the process. It's not like there's magic to it or anything. But it seems to me that since you're not going to be able to vote anyways, it probably makes sense not to invite you in the executive session and tell you that it's 8:17. Go enjoy the rest of your evening. Does anybody disagree with that? Yeah.
Hey, Jack, before I leave, I just want to say that, and Brian, that this is National Volunteer Appreciation Week, and we really appreciate all you board members for, the countless hours that we have been together for this past year. It's been a lot more than ever, but really just thanks from the bottom of our hearts for everything you put into this. It really does make a difference.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Hey, Robin. Since you can't go to the executive session, you gotta get away too. But in the unlikely event that we need a breaking vote on approval of the minutes from last month, can you give somebody your proxy?
I think proxy has to go to you, Jack.
pressure.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody? Everybody. Again, I don't want to feel like you're being excluded. I'm actually trying to save you. So.
And when this is done in person, normally the board leaves. We don't just kick people out.
Yes,
Okay.
Oh no, I
It's not
remember. I got
virtual
kicked
setting.
out.
If someone wants to stay, I can create a breakout room.
Oh, yeah, I
For
forget
you
about
all
that.
there if you want, if someone wants to, but I don't.
Well, and that's why we intentionally did it so that when we come back, the only thing is the approval of the minutes and Christina's monthly. I move to adjourn.
Right.
So.
Right.
And
All right.
for the live stream purposes, Jack, I am going to mute our microphones, and I'm going to continue to share a screen that has no faces on it.
Okay.
So the live stream will not go down, so we will preserve our open meeting. That way Christina's finishing will still be part of
Finishing
the
move,
part of the live stream.
Fantastic.
And then Brian, I guess you don't need to stick around either, since you won't vote on the consent agenda. So unless you have any burning desire to hang around. Okay.
That was a
then
muted
can
nope.
Nope, I'm good. Yeah, sorry.
Right.
I can't read lips well, but I could read nope.
Nope.
Hey, Bob, before I jump off, just want to say thank you, Brandon, for everything. And thank you, Robin, for everything as well. So, kind of end of an era here, so thank you.
All right.
Jump off then?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Justin, Catherine. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move that the board go into executive session pursuant to CRS section 24-6-4024F for the purpose of discussing personnel matters.
Okay.
Christina, the floor is yours.
All right.
All right.
And we're back to live streaming to YouTube.
All right. We've concluded the executive session, which was solely for the purpose of discussing personnel matters pursuant to the CRS code section cited in the motion. And I think that leaves us with one agenda item, which is the approval of the consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Anybody have any questions, comments, or can we vote on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the March 6th, the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. My formal roll call for this.
Yes.
Jack Llewellyn.
Yes.
Brittany Horseman.
Yes.
Lisa Myers, yes. Robin's no longer here with us. Beth McDonald.
Yes.
Christina Grant.
Yes.
Brandon Smith.
Yes.
Becky Springstead.
Yes.
And Carmen Center.
Yes.
Oh, gosh,
Okay.
we needed that tiebreaker.
I know. Thank goodness we had it just in case. Hey, for 1 minute on non-substantive matters, will people stay after we adjourn and the feed is discontinued? Please.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.